Hello and welcome. My name is Laura Vargas. I'm the Director of Outreach Programs for SADOD. Today's training will focus on Massachusetts-based resources and referrals for individuals and families affected by a death due to substance use. Let's begin by discussing what peer support is and why it can be beneficial to grieving people. Peer support is when a person gets help from someone who has been through a similar experience. Everyone at SADOD who delivers peer grief support, both staff and volunteer, has experienced the death of someone close to them from drug and alcohol related causes. Sharing common ground with a peer grief helper can be incredibly valuable, especially when there's an added layer of stigma. The death of a loved one from any cause is one of the most painful and distressing experiences, and someone who has been there can help a person through the difficulties and pitfalls they encounter. While each person's experience is individual and unique, the similarities provide an opportunity to connect on a deeper level, to feel seen, heard, and understood. Death caused by substance use can be extremely isolating, and many friends, family members, and coworkers do not know the right thing to say or the right thing to do. But a peer grief helper can relate to even the most difficult and trying times a grieving person faces. When provided with peer grief support, grieving people often realize that they are not alone, that others in their community can relate to what they are experiencing and aren't judging them. A peer helper can be one of the companions a bereaved person finds as they travel on their grief journey. SADOD stands for Support After Death by Overdose. We are a free grief support resource in Massachusetts for people affected by a death from substance use, not only from overdose, but also from suicide, homicide, accident, or medical complications. We are dedicated to peer support, and we serve three audiences that often overlap, starting with the bereaved public, individuals on the recovery spectrum, and individuals working as direct service providers. The providers we support work directly with individuals who are at a high risk of dying from drug alcohol use or related causes, and many of them have been on the front lines of the overdose crisis for many years. All of the SADOD staff who do outreach to grieving people and all of our volunteers identify as peers that have lost a loved one due to substance use. They are turning their pain into purpose by reaching out a helping hand to newly bereaved people. The staff and volunteers are passionate about the work they do, and every one of them truly knows how difficult the grief journey is. We offer one-on-one support and peer grief groups, as well as trainings and workshops, and our website is a rich source of free materials. Online and printed grief support resources are available in English and Spanish. Please share our information with anyone who might need it. They can contact us, or you can refer them by simply completing a brief form on our website. We hope you will share the link: www.sadod.org/request-help, and encourage them to submit the form. Please keep the URL handy so you can refer any grieving people directly to us. Anyone can request outreach from a SADOD peer grief support specialist who will contact the grieving person directly in the way the person chooses, whether that be a phone call, email, or text. Our peer grief support specialists work one-on-one with bereaved individuals to provide crucial peer support and to assist them with resources and referrals, ranging from emotional support to financial, legal, and other resources. We also have a partnership with The Sun Will Rise, a Massachusetts-based nonprofit with over 24 peer grief support groups throughout the state and online that focus on grief following deaths due to substance use-related causes. There are also several grief support groups throughout the state. Please access the SADOD Peer Grief Support Group directory from the button on the top of every page on our website. It features over 60 peer grief support groups throughout Massachusetts, more than half of which focus exclusively on grief after a death from substance use. We'll speak a little bit more about some of these other organizations throughout the state. As we mentioned, we have a very strong collaboration with The Sun Will Rise, a nonprofit that has been a major subcontractor with SADOD almost since the project began. The two organizations work together seamlessly on behalf of bereaved people. So anyone who has access to The Sun Will Rise also has access to SAD/OD programs and vice versa. Right now, there are 18 online groups every month, along with a number of in-person groups throughout the state. And The Sun Will Rise has been especially successful at starting specialty grief groups. What that means is that they offer individualized groups for men, parents, people in recovery, spouses, those grieving the loss of an only child or of more than one loved one, siblings, and members of the LGBTQ plus community. These groups are focused exclusively on individuals who identify as being members of the community they represent. In a world where people's special needs are often overlooked, they offer a safe space where people with common experiences and perspectives can feel connected with others who know where they are coming from. The Sun Will Rise also offers a private Facebook group for bereaved people. In addition to SAD/OD and The Sun Will Rise, there are several other peer grief support organizations throughout the state. The SAD/OD support group directory features the following groups along with many others. One well-known group in Massachusetts is Learn to Cope. Learn to Cope primarily offers education, resources, and hope for family members and friends who have loved ones who currently struggle with substance use. Learn to Cope is also the host of two peer grief support groups, one for people who have lost a loved one to substance use and also have a loved one who is currently struggling with substance use, and another for people who have lost a loved one and have been members of Learn to Cope. Another group is GRASP, which stands for Grief Recovery After a Substance Passing. It's a nationwide group of local peer grief support groups. There are peer grief support groups for individuals grieving from death due to substance use throughout the country, including one in Massachusetts. Next, we have the Compassionate Friends, which is an international group of local peer grief support groups for bereaved parents, siblings, and grandparents. These groups are open to individuals who have experienced a death from any cause, not specific to deaths due to substance use. They have hundreds of chapters across the world, including several in Massachusetts. We also have Team Sharing, which was founded in Massachusetts and is now a nationwide online source of support for parents who have lost a child to substance use. The organization has state chapters involved in social networking, community activism, and grief support. The Massachusetts chapter is most active on Facebook. Beyond peer grief support, there are a number of other forms of grief support, one of which is clinical grief support. Clinical support for grief comes in many forms, from a grief therapist or counselor to a general therapist or a medical provider. Recommendations should be based on the individual's unique needs, requests, and financial picture. Clinical support can exist on its own or in conjunction with peer support or spiritual grief support. It's really a matter of finding what feels right to the individual. Exploring what a grieving person needs and wants is the key to helping them find the support that is right for them, including in finding clinical support. There's also spiritual support. Whether somebody had a faith-based community that they turned to or a spiritual community prior to their grief experience, or if it's new to them, a lot of people lean into their spirituality, lean into their faith as a source of support in their grief journey. It's important to keep this in mind and be respectful of individuals' personal experiences and beliefs. There's also a number of support options for children. Even the youngest children experience grief. While their expressions of grief may be different than that of adults, they are absolutely deserving of grief support. There are lots of state and nationwide organizations that provide help for supporting grieving children. Some of the Massachusetts-based organizations include Jeff's Place, the Children's Room, Rick's Place, and many more. Nationally, some of the most well-known grief support centers for children include Dougie Center, the National Alliance for Children's Grief, and Judy's House. Even if you're not near these state or nationwide locations, a lot of them have a wealth of information on their website, free resources best supporting grieving children. A person needs to reach out to each organization, each support option to find what's right for them and for their child. This might include reaching out to a school counselor, teachers, other individuals in their community who have also been through a grief experience, anything of the sort. There's so much information out there, and each child is so different in what would be most helpful to them. The need for practical and logistical support comes up often in the world of grief support, yet it's not something that many people think of when they think of grief support. However, SADOD's peer grief support specialists can help grieving people find resources they need in Massachusetts. After a loved one dies, people commonly need financial resources for funeral expenses, housing debt, and other issues. The person who died might have played the main role in a family, and a sudden loss of a primary income earner can be serious and often comes as a shock for people. Some bereaved people may need legal resources for estates, custody of children, and closing accounts. There might be children affected by the death of their caregiver, and custody issues may be daunting for a grieving person to handle. Obtaining effective legal advice and counsel can lead to the right solution for them. There's often a need for death-specific resources needed for assistance with a death certificate, life insurance, or autopsy report. Taking these needs into account can make all of the difference for a grieving person who is already dealing with so much and who may already be so overwhelmed because of their loss. If someone is focusing on matters such as these and is not able to get their needs met, it might prevent them from focusing on their emotional needs or getting the grief support that they really need. Finally, support for substance use issues may come into play. Grief, as we know, is a major risk factor for increased drug or alcohol use, new instances of drug or alcohol use, or recurrence of drug or alcohol addiction. It's important to provide information on support for substance use to any individuals who indicate that they may be struggling or who may be coping with their grief and pain by using substances. Massachusetts has a 24/7 substance use helpline. The number is 800-327-5050. Anyone can also text HOPE, HOPE, to 800-327. The helpline provides referrals to harm reduction, treatment, and recovery services. Referrals to harm reduction are for those who are not ready to seek treatment. Contacting the helpline does not require a person to go into treatment. Everyone's needs are different, and the helpline is intended to find the support each individual person needs. The Never Use Alone hotline is an overdose prevention hotline. Trained peers stand by while individuals use substances and are able to activate emergency response if there's an overdose. The number is 877-696-1996, and the website is www.neverusealone.com. Finally, the SAMHSA hotline gives a person access 24/7 to the National Treatment Referral and Information Services. It's available in English and Spanish. You can call 800-662-4367 or text the zip code of the person in need of support to 435-748. Thank you so much for tuning into this training. All of the resources mentioned in this training can be found at the SADOD website, www.sadod.org. If there are any questions, you can contact me, Laura, at sadod.org. Please keep in mind that we have a number of peer grief support specialists who are able to help anybody in Massachusetts grieving a death due to substance use-related causes with locating any resources and referrals that would be helpful to them in their grief journey. So please do not hesitate to reach out. The website for requesting help from a peer grief support specialist is www.sadod.org/request-help. There's also a button at the top of every page on our website that can take you to that referral form. Thank you so much.